Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of Hong Kong Horror. Tonight, we're heading back to Japan. Now, I'll be honest with you, one of my favorite things about Japan has to be their convenience stores. Everything is so delicious and open 24 hours. I could live off those convenient egg salad sandwiches. But what if I told you, sometimes the people working the night shifts in those very stores experience things they can't explain. Tonight's story is one of those cases. It's one that stayed with me. After the story, I'll share what I personally think happened here from a cultural perspective, so stick around if you're interested. Let's dive right in. This story comes from an older man living in rural Japan. Let's call him Takashi. Takashi was 70 years old at the time and newly retired from a long career in the city as a salaryman. But sitting around all day didn't suit him. He's heard of retirees falling into depression after losing their routine, their purpose. So, to keep himself busy, both mentally and physically, he picked up a part-time job at a convenience store. It was the 24-hour branch, tucked inside a gas station, way out in the countryside. Not the kind of place you'd expect anything unusual to happen. Takashi took the night shift, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. He liked the slow pace. Most of his customers were long-haul truck drivers stopping in for snacks or a quick refill for gas. For a while, it was peaceful. There was a family that frequented the store, a man, his wife, and their young daughter. Locals, judging from how often they came around. The mother and daughter usually dropped by around 7 p.m. to grab a few things after school. Usually it was the same snacks or a few drinks to bring home. The father came in later, usually around midnight. Sometimes just to top up on gas, sometimes just for a pack of cigarettes. And every Sunday, without fail, the whole family came together, laughing, chatting, buying drinks and snacks before heading home. Takashi never knew their names, but he recognized their faces since they came by so often. Then, one Sunday evening, the mother and daughter didn't show up. Takashi figured maybe they were busy or just home sleeping. Pretty normal, since it was around 4 a.m. The father came in alone, but something about him tonight was off. He came in a lot later than usual. He also looked pale, worn out. His eyes were dull, and his hands trembled slightly as he approached the counter. "Are you okay, sir?" Takashi asked. The man gave a twitchy smile. "Yeah, just tired from work." He pointed to his usual brand of cigarettes behind the counter. Takashi grabbed them, rang him up, and that's when the man patted his pockets down, looking embarrassed. "Oh, I forgot my wallet at home," he said. "Mind if I pay you back in a couple of days?" Now, Takashi had seen him enough times to trust him. They exchanged small talk plenty of times before, so Takashi waved it off, paid for the pack himself, and handed them over to the man. The man nodded, thanked him softly, and walked out into the dark. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same man, same request, same empty expression. "I forgot my wallet," he said. "Can I pay you back in a couple of days?" This time, Takashi noticed something else. His movements, his voice, everything about him was eerily identical to the night before. Still, Takashi nodded and handed the man the cigarettes, same as the night before. "I haven't seen your wife and daughter lately. How are they doing?" he asked gently. The man paused. "They're fine," he said. "I'm heading home to see them now." Then, once again, he dropped his gaze and walked away from the counter and out into the darkness. This time, something in Takashi told him to follow, just to see where this man went. But by the time he stepped outside, the man was already gone. No car pulling out, no taillights, no engine noise, just silence. On the third night, the mother and daughter finally came back. Takashi felt a wave of relief when he saw them walk through the glass doors. "Hey," he said, "I haven't seen you two for a few days. Is everything okay?" The mother gave a faint smile, but her eyes were puffy. The little girl kept her gaze on the floor. They grabbed their usual favorite snacks, paid quickly, and turned to leave. Takashi gently stopped them. "I'm so sorry to ask, ma'am, but your husband came by the last 2 nights. He said he forgot his wallet, so I covered him for 2 packs of cigarettes. Do you mind settling up for him?" The mother froze. Her eyes widened. She slowly turned to face Takashi, and her expression changed completely. She looked horrified. Then she said something that made Takashi's blood run cold. "My husband passed away 2 nights ago." She shared that he had been on his way to work when he realized he'd forgotten his wallet at home. He turned the car around, but on the way back, he was struck by a truck, killed instantly. They hadn't been to the store because they were busy making funeral arrangements. Takashi felt the room spin. He had spoken to that man twice, had casual conversations, handed him cigarettes. The mother, still shaken, insisted on paying Takashi back, but he gently refused. "Don't worry about it," he told her. "It's on me." He felt horrible about the whole situation after hearing what happened. She nodded, thanked him, bowed slightly, and then left with her daughter. Takashi stood there in a daze. Later that night, when the store was quiet again, Takashi checked the CCTV footage for the past 2 nights. The camera above the register, the one that recorded his interactions with customers, was working fine all night, until the exact moment the man supposedly came in. During those few minutes, the footage glitched, just static. He could somewhat see himself moving behind the counter through all the static, taking down the pack of cigarettes, talking to someone, reaching out to someone. But on the other side of the counter was a blur of heavy static and white noise. He checked the front door camera next. At exactly 4 a.m. both nights, the automatic glass doors opened, and about 5 minutes later, they opened again, like someone had entered and then left. But there was no one there. No figure, no shadow, just empty space. The following night, the mother came by again with her daughter. They bought a few things and left some extra change on the counter, more than the amount owed. Takashi ran outside to give back the extra. He caught up just as they were getting into their car. That's when he saw it. In the back seat sat a man. He was faint, translucent, wearing the exact same clothes the father always wore. He was staring straight ahead, expressionless, still. Takashi froze. The mother drove away, unaware of what was sitting behind her. "So, what do you guys think happened here? Was Takashi just exhausted from his long shift? Was his mind playing tricks on him? Or did the father of the family come back just to be with his family again? Maybe some routines don't break, not even in death." Let me know what you think happened in the comments below. Here's what I think happened here. Sudden or accidental deaths, especially when it happens during routine daily life, is considered a classic setup for a ghost who doesn't know they're dead. This is often referred to as seimanbai, translating to dying with your eyes open, meaning that the soul can't rest due to unresolved matters. The father in the story died unexpectedly and suddenly, on his way home to retrieve his wallet. That unfinished task combined with his regular routine likely trapped his spirit in a loop, repeating what he intended to do before death. It's not uncommon for a spirit to return to familiar places, especially those connected with their final memories in life. These spirits can exist in a liminal state, somewhere between awareness and denial. At first, the ghost often doesn't realize they're dead, which is what I think happened with his father when he came into the store the first 2 nights. But when Takashi saw him in the back of the car, I believe that's when the shift happened. The ghost, by now, most likely has become aware of his death and is choosing to linger just a little longer to be with his family. So the first 2 nights, he was most likely unconscious to his own death, only acting out of habit and unfinished obligation. Perhaps he was with his wife when she shared the news of his passing to Takashi. After hearing this, the spirit may have gained clarity that he's dead. There's an old Chinese saying, "Yan yao ting, guai yik yao yi," which roughly translates to, "People have emotions, and so do ghosts." The sighting of him in the back of the car could have been a turning point for him, realizing his own death. He may not have fully crossed over or faded away immediately, but in that moment, he was no longer a lost soul, but just holding on to the last threads of love from his old life before letting go. He chose to have one last ride with his family, not to haunt, but to just accompany them one last time. Alright, for our second incident for tonight, we're going back to Hong Kong. In a concrete jungle like Hong Kong, space always comes at a cost. For some working class residents, there's only one affordable option left: subdivided flats. The infamous fong. One-family apartments divided up into cramped cubicles with shared kitchens, thin walls, and barely any privacy. Some of these were legal on paper, but barely livable in practice. In this story, our friend Derek ended up in one of these tong fongs and experienced something truly terrifying. He was 32 years old at the time, working night shifts at a warehouse near Sham Shui Po. His pay wasn't bad, but the late hours and long commute from his family home in North Point, Bangkok, was slowly taking a toll on him. After missing too many last buses and sleeping at his workplace more than once, he decided to find a place closer to work. He decided to look into subdivided flats. Only 2,500 HKD a month, no windows, but it was just a 10-minute walk from the warehouse. He decided for that price, it was a no-brainer. The unit was part of a 4-story walk-up, chopped into 6 coffin-sized rooms. Derek's was at the end of a narrow hallway, the furthest in. The walls were thin plywood. The ceiling was low. The room had a single flickering fluorescent bulb that gave off a cold, almost surgical glow. Derek hated the lighting, so he bought a cheap floor lamp from IKEA when he moved in. The bed came with the room, though it wasn't the prettiest. It was stained and the springs were exposed. He laid down his own sheets, trying not to think about how many strangers had slept in it before. There was also a mirror in the room, a cheap one, stuck on the wall next to the bed. So Derek would pretty much see himself in the reflection as he laid in bed. That's how small the room was. By the first week, something already felt off. One early morning, after finishing a shift around 4:30 a.m., Derek returned home completely exhausted. He collapsed into bed without even changing his clothes and passed out. But within minutes, he was wide awake again. It wasn't a sound that startled him. It felt like a presence, the unmistakable feeling that someone was standing right next to his bed. He felt the breeze of someone's breath on him, the feeling of someone watching him. He fumbled around for the lamp switch and switched it on. The light buzzed to life, but there was no one there. But the air, it reeked, thick and stale, like the smell of rotting fish. It smelled so strong, as if he was standing in the middle of a wet market with the fish stalls. Derek didn't bring any fish home recently, and neither did his direct neighbors, or so they claimed the next day when he asked. Still, the smell returned on and off at odd hours, always when he was half asleep. One afternoon, after his usual shift, he showered and fell asleep in the room. His door was shut and the lamp was off. Since he had no windows and no natural light, it was hard to tell what time it was without a clock. Morning and night became meaningless. That day, something changed. A pain bloomed in his abdomen, sharp and unnatural, as if something heavy were crushing him. Derek woke up from this and tried to move, but he couldn't. His body was locked, paralyzed. Panic rose fast. His eyes fluttered open, but the room was pitch black. He reached for his phone beside the pillow. With immense effort, he managed to brush the screen. The glow lit up part of the room, just enough for him to see. That's when he saw it. In the mirror, he saw a figure just above him. It was a woman with long black hair, hanging down in long tangled strands, feet planted squarely on his stomach. Not standing beside him, standing on him. Derek couldn't see her on top of him, but only when he looked in the mirror. The woman slowly turned her head toward the mirror until her full face was visible in the reflection of the mirror. She had an unnatural smile, locking eyes with Derek through the reflection. Derek tried to scream, but nothing came out. His mouth was open, his lungs full of fear, but he was voiceless. He forced his body to move, fighting what felt like an invisible weight pressing down on him. After what felt like an eternity, he managed to get some movement back in his hand. He slammed the switch on the lamp as the light from the bulb lit up the whole room. Instantly, the figure was gone. As soon as the light went on, Derek regained movement again. He laid there, drenched in cold sweat, staring at the mirror. Had he imagined it? A dream? A hallucination? Beiguizha, that's what we call it. That's what we call sleep paralysis when ghosts are involved. Derek told no one, but on his next day off, he begged his girlfriend to spend the night with him at his place. He gave no reason, fearing she wouldn't believe him. He just said he hated being alone in the new flat. She agreed, but barely lasted the night. The room was too cramped, too stuffy. 2 full-grown adults should not sleep on a twin-sized bed. It was so uncomfortable all night, as she felt like she would fall off the bed at any moment. She never came back after that, but nothing supernatural happened that night. Then came the worst night. Derek got home mid-morning, just after 7 a.m. Most of the building was quiet. The other tenants have already headed out to work. He left his door slightly open so that a sliver of hallway light could reach into the darkness. Since he had no windows, he did this occasionally so that some fresh air could make its way into his stuffy room. He lay down, exhausted. He fell asleep within minutes, but something was different this time. There was no weight. Instead, he felt too light. His body felt like it was rising. He couldn't open his eyes, couldn't speak, but he felt his body lifting off the bed, a slow, eerie ascent, inch by inch, as if something had reached inside and was pulling his soul out by the seams. He didn't feel like he was dreaming, as if he knew what was going on. He was floating, but it was as if he was outside his physical body, as if he was floating upward. He was able to see his physical body still asleep beneath him. That's when he saw her again, standing just outside the cracked door. The same woman he saw a few nights ago was now standing at his door, smiling at him as he was floating higher and higher, just watching. Terrified, Derek began to recite the only Buddhist prayer he could remember, one his grandmother used to chant under her breath when she burned incense. Namo Amito Phat, Namo Amito Phat, again and again in his mind, desperate. And slowly, he began to come down. He felt the weight return, the pressure of the mattress beneath his back, the feeling of gravity reclaiming him. He gasped and pulled it upright. The room was empty, the door still cracked open, but a little wider now, as if someone had opened it while he was asleep. Derek didn't wait. He called the landlord and gave his notice on the spot, packed what little he had, and left the room the same afternoon. But to this day, he refuses to sleep in any room with a mirror near the bed. So, what do you guys think happened to Derek in this tong fong? Was he working so much at night that he was at a point of exhaustion where his mind started playing tricks on him? Or did he really encounter something from the other side? From a cultural perspective, there are a few things going on here. Based on traditional Chinese and Southeast Asian spiritual beliefs, some of the events in the story suggest a haunting rooted in residual trauma, possibly involving a restless spirit, 孤魂野鬼. The spirit could be someone who's passed in the building, or in the vicinity of where Derek was staying. In many Chinese beliefs, if someone dies alone or without a proper funeral or spiritual rites, their spirit becomes a wandering ghost, especially if they died in pain, depression, or isolation. The mirror's reflection, the smell of fish, and the pressure on the body are classic signs of lingering yin energy, yumhei. The ghost standing on Derek's stomach suggests dominance or an attempt to suppress or control him. If the spirit was someone who ended their own life, there's a possibility that they may not even know they're dead. It's possible that she could have stayed in this room before Derek and is now angry that he is occupying her space. What Derek experienced matches the traditional belief of 被鬼抓, when a ghost presses or immobilizes someone during sleep. Symptoms of this include the inability to move or speak, the feeling of someone near or on the body, and sometimes even seeing an apparition mid-paralysis. This isn't just medical sleep paralysis in folk belief. It's often seen as a warning or spiritual attack, especially if it happens multiple times in the same place. Also, in both Chinese and Southeast Asian belief systems, mirrors can reflect more than just the physical world. They are believed to be portals to the spirit world, especially in the high-yin place like windowless rooms, hospitals, or subdivided flats, just to name a few. If someone dies in front of a mirror, it can trap their spirit there. That's why mirrors are often covered during funerals, so the soul doesn't get accidentally trapped or lost. As for Derek's floating experience, this could be related to his soul being pulled. The sensation of his soul rising suggests a near-possessive encounter. I don't believe Derek's body was really floating in a physical sense, but to him, it felt that way, because the soul was floating out of his body, spiritually. This is known as soul departure. It's called Lei Wen in Cantonese. In Taoist and Chinese folk belief, the human being is made up of Samwan Tapak, 3 spiritual souls, and 7 physical spirits. The One governs consciousness, identity, and spiritual memory. Under trauma or spiritual assault, one or more of these spiritual souls can be forced out of the body. When the soul drifts away without control, it leaves the body vacant, vulnerable to possession, also called shorten in Cantonese. A ghost or other spirit may move in, especially in places with really strong yin energy, like Derek's room, which is dark, damp, and windowless. Number 2 is death. If the soul cannot return, the person may fall into a coma or die. And 3 is spiritual substitution, Taisun. We covered this topic in detail in one of my previous episodes. In more sinister folklore, a ghost who died unjustly may pull someone's soul out to take their place in the cycle of reincarnation, creating a ghostly swap. That is, the living dies, the ghost returns in their body. The fact that Derek didn't just feel crushed, as with typical ghost oppression, but instead he felt himself floating upward, indicates that something was trying to pull his soul away, not to kill him violently, but to take his place quietly. So why would the spirit want to do this? Some believe that when a ghost is lonely, resentful, or lacking a path to reincarnation, it may try to possess a living person's body, especially if this person is vulnerable. When they are emotionally weak, physically weak, or spiritually unprotected. In Cantonese, we call this shorten. The spirit may want to do it for a number of different reasons. To experience the living world again, to fulfill unfinished desires, because sometimes they don't realize they're dead and believe the body is theirs, or more tragically, because they died without proper rites. Another reason that Derek was experiencing these things is because the room has become a yamhei hotspot, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is thin. Without spiritual protection, the soul can be pulled away during sleep, especially in isolated, unblessed places. Add in a mirror, no sunlight, and frequent sleep, and it becomes a perfect environment for a spirit to linger. I personally think that the ghost wasn't just haunting Derek, it was testing whether it could push his soul out. The first time, it stood on him. The second time, it tried to displace him. Had he not resisted, he might have woken up days later as someone else, or not woken up at all. Thanks for listening all the way up to here. I hope you enjoyed the story and the cultural lesson for this week. Until we meet again next week,